Greetings everybody, welcome to the channel. Today, under our Color and Pageantry division of our channel, we're going to be talking college football, and we're going to present this year's preseason All-America team and our top 25 preseason poll for this upcoming 2024 season. So we hope you'll join us. Before we get started with the top 25 this year, let's take a look at our preseason All-America team. Now, quite a few folks are not sticking around in college football. They're moving on to the National Football League to get paid, I guess, even though we have the NIL. Seems kind of surprising, but a lot of guys are moving on seemingly quicker than they used to. Let's look at this offense first. Luther Burden, the former five-star out there at Missouri. Missouri is very good offensively. They're going to light the scoreboard up again, and Luther Burden is an outstanding reason why. This is a great football player out there. Oregon has got a great receiving core. There's a transfer from Texas A&M, Evan Stewart. He did not quite make our team here, but he's very good. And along with Tez Johnson. And then Dylan Gabriel at quarterback. Oregon just stacked. That's why they're in the preseason top 5 everywhere across the board. Emeka Izuka over there at Ohio State is fantastic. Ohio State has got a lot of good players. A great offensive line for the Bucks this year. They're looking good, and they've got some good running backs as well. Now, Arizona lit the scoreboard up last year. That's going to continue if they've got the great wide receiver and they've got that outstanding quarterback there. They're looking good. Some great running backs on here that were good last year. They're back to wreak havoc again. The offensive line is very strong. You'll notice there's some players here from Georgia. Georgia is stacked on the offensive line. But here's a look at some of the players, the offensive players we have on our preseason All-America team. Now, over on the stop side, we look at the University of Georgia. They've got a lot of players at every level of this defense here on the first and second teams, and that's probably giving you a good indication of why they're our preseason #1 football team, the Georgia Bulldogs. There's some outstanding players here. Penn State has a great defense. You'll see Abdul Carter on the list there. There's some big transfers this year that have moved teams, and these are stellar players. There's a lot of good inside players. Tyleik Williams, Howard Cross, and Dion Walker from Kentucky. We didn't even get to Dante Carleone from Cincinnati, who almost made this team. Gillott over at Louisville is a fantastic player. Michigan is represented on here. And Barrett Carter, the outstanding linebacker at Clemson. Look at Oklahoma State, a pair of linebackers in this group. And Ohio State is well represented, as is Oregon, you see on there. So there's some great defensive players. There's some players that are going to make some big plays down the stretch. We're going to have our eye on them. But here's a look at some of the great ones on the defensive side as we head into 2024. Now we see our specialists heading into the season. Graham Nicholson, the outstanding place kicker there at Alabama, and Alex Mastermano at Florida State, the punter. Now you see Florida's got a second-team punter. Florida always has great punters. They got a couple of them in the NFL and kickers as well. Bert Auburn did a great job. I don't know why he's not at Auburn, but he's over at Texas. And there's some great return guys on here. Barian Brown from Kentucky was loose all over the place. And Zachariah Branch, that's going to be a name to watch at Southern Cal. He's a great wide receiver as well. Now, as we look at the newcomers, we've got two guys, Dylan Raiola at Nebraska. He's going to start from day one. His dad is a Nebraska legacy offensive lineman, one of the highest rated recruits coming out of high school last year. Look for Dylan Raiola, if he stays healthy, to do big things for the Huskers. Dylan Stewart is a defensive end. There happens to be a great spot available for him to dive in on the edge for the Gamecocks. They're going to need some help defensively. This is a guy who can do it for them. Now, we did want to mention, you're welcome to follow us over on Facebook at the Color and Pageantry. We'll be posting over there throughout the year. We'd love to have you, so please feel welcome to join us over there. But anyway, there's your look at some of the great specialists we'll see over here. By the way, we didn't even mention Travis Hunter. I don't know how many kicks he's going to be returning for Colorado. The dual player, wide receiver, and defensive back. Also a great kick returner. Whenever Travis Hunter's on the field, you got to keep your eyeball in between the grid to watch him. Now, every year we take a hard look at a whole bunch of teams trying to formulate our top 25. Those that don't get directly in the top 25 but just missed, we refer to them as our Super Six. We'll preview in a moment those groups. But right now we want to talk about the team that didn't make the top 25 or the Super Six. This is a group of good football teams that we gave consideration to. I want to tell you, last year we had Missouri in this group, and they finished in the top 10 with a victory over Ohio State. Now, this year we've got teams in here. We've got Wisconsin from the Big Ten. They've traditionally been a very good football team. They've got Luke Fickell, a great coach over there, kind of in transition. We're watching them. They could be good, but we don't really see it this year. UCF, now that's a team that is intriguing. They could do some damage in the Big 12. They've got some talented, skilled people. We're going to keep our eye on them. They have a chance to win some big ball games. I believe they got the Florida Gators this year, so we'll check that out. North Carolina with their great running back, down a little bit after losing quarterback Drake May. We'll see what's going on with them. Washington, of course, is down from their championship run. Lost a ton of people on that team, but they got a new coach, and we'll see how they fare. Rutgers is a very good football team. They could do some. They're probably going to beat somebody in the Big Ten there. Keep your eye open for Rutgers. Kentucky, they have talent. They can make things happen in the SEC. They've done it before. Memphis, they may be the team from the G5 that gets into the playoff. That's a good football team. They play Florida State this year in Tallahassee. Mike could make some noise there. Texas Tech is very well coached. They could do some damage. Liberty and Boise State are some other teams that are in the non-Power 5 that could really do good. Florida is a decent football team, but they have the worst schedule in the country. They could go 3-9, but still be better than all but about 40 teams in the country. Georgia Tech is another one along those lines. They are improving. They're getting better. They've got a tough schedule. They could keep it close with Florida State and Dublin as we kick the season off Saturday, August 24th at noon Eastern. And Texas Christian, we can't forget about them. They were in the national championship game just 2 years ago. So the Horned Frogs can always come up and get you out there. So we got to have our eyes on them. But these are the teams that did not make our Super 6 or our top 25 this year. We've got our eyes on them. You should keep your eyes on them as well. All right, folks, let's check out the teams that narrowly missed being included in the top 25. We'll start with SMU, new to the ACC this year. Now, much of the offensive unit returns for the Mustangs, including all the top skill position players. So in looking at what Coach Rhett Lashley and the team and what he wants to do, we expect the scoreboard to get lit up out there. Now, SMU has improved dramatically on defense from last year, but now they're in the ACC and business is going to pick up. But in looking at the schedule, only the game at Florida State looks totally out of reach. So we got the Ponies coming in at 11-1. Next is Louisville. Now, Louisville made it to the ACC championship game last year. They have much-traveled quarterback Tyler Shaw, who's arrived via the portal, and as a new signal caller for the Cardinals under Jeff Brom. There are losses to be overcome at the skill spots, but this is nothing new for Brom. Defensive end Ashton Galat leads an overachieving defensive unit that can cause a lot of problems. Now, the Cardinal have road games at Notre Dame and Miami, and they got a tough home game against Clemson, and they got Georgia Tech and SMU and Kentucky. So those are all really, really tough games. So we got the Cardinal, although they're pretty good, coming in at 8-4 at best. Next, we got Iowa State. Now, the Clones seem to underachieve when there's a lot expected of them. And then when you give up on them, they have a really good year. Now, this year, Matt Campbell has a veteran team again with all the top skill position players returning. Now, Iowa State is very good on the back end of their defense, so this is a team to watch that could perhaps win 10 games. Now, they do play at Iowa, a big one, West Virginia, and Kansas and Utah, but they host UCF and Kansas State. So there's some opportunities there for the Clones, but we got them at about 8-4 this year. We looked hard at the Auburn Tigers. Now, the late loss last season, a blowout loss to New Mexico State, was mind-boggling to say the least. Then Auburn looked to be on a roll after a loss at... We looked very hard at Auburn. Now, the late loss last season, a blowout loss to New Mexico State, was mind-boggling to say the least. Then came the heartbreaking loss to Alabama. Good grief. Now, it does appear that Hugh Freeze has the Tigers ascending, with the question being how rapid is the ascent. Now, 9 offensive starters are back, and Freeze will once again have Peyton Thorne at quarterback to pupil. And the touchdown-to-interception ratio that Peyton Thorne has needs improvement. Freeze is the right guy for that. Now, the defense returning is experienced, and it includes their 2023 top tackler, Eugene Asante, who excels at weak side linebacker. Now, Auburn has an opportunity early. They could be 4-0 when they host Oklahoma. Now, looking at the whole schedule, it's reasonable to conclude that Auburn finishes 8-4, but remaining healthy with some good luck, there could be more than that available for the Tigers and Hugh Freeze. Arizona just emerged onto the scene last year. We saw them coming, though. They were looking really good the year before. They lost some close games, so they were in them all. Now, the Wildcats were better than most folks thought last year, part of a remarkable turnaround under Jeb Fish. Now, they were 1-11 in 2021 and then finished 11-3 with a bowl victory over Oklahoma last year. Now, Jed Fish is off to Washington. We thought he might wait for the Florida job to open up, but you have to wonder how good Arizona is going to respond to losing Fish. Now, offensively, they've got their quarterback and their fantastic wide receiver back. That's going to form a lethal duo that's going to keep Arizona threatening the end zone all year. Now, defensively, 7 starters return. They've got all-conference candidate Jacob Manu at linebacker, and he led the Cats in tackles a year ago. Corner Takrio Davis, he leads a veteran secondary. The Cats are tough. Now, they got a strong football team, but we got to wonder how the transition to new coach Brent Brennan goes. Now, several members of the team bolted on over to Washington with Coach Jed Fish, so that could cause some turmoil. So although we think the Cats will be just about in every game they play, this is a tough schedule. And with the turmoil, we're going to go 8-4 for the Cats. Now, when we got started, we kind of thought we would have Southern Cal somewhere up in the top of the top 15 there, but didn't look out that way for us. Things have not gone quite as expected for Lincoln Riley since he arrived at Southern Cal. Amongst all that fanfare, he's only 21-8, which would seem below what fan expectations were when he arrived. Now, are the Trojans ready for a primetime playoff run? Not in our mind. Now, the defense may be better than you think. 9 starters return over there. Bear Alexander is a monster up front, and Mason Cobb has shown brilliance at inside linebacker. Now, on offense, that's where Riley's expertise is, and they face a transition at quarterback. They're going to look at Miller Moss. He only threw 65 passes a year ago to step in on what they need to be a high-powered offense. Now, there's great wide receivers to work with, including Zachariah Branch. Jocavius Marks comes over from Mississippi State at running back. So there is opportunity on offense. Now, the schedule is daunting. They open in Las Vegas against LSU, and that kind of looks like a loss to us. Now, they got a 7-game stretch. They have defending national champion Michigan. They got Wisconsin at home. Then they're on the road to Minnesota. Then Penn State comes out there. Penn State's good this year. They close. They've got Rutgers. Rutgers is tough. They also, they got to be underdog in a lot of these games. The final 3 games has a road game against UCLA, bracketed by home games with Nebraska and Notre Dame. My goodness. Wow. Now, 9-3 would be awesome. But with the lack of quality depth, this looks like about 7-5 to us for the USC Trojans. And that's not what they were bargaining for when they brought Lincoln Riley to town. So we'll have to see. Okay, folks, thanks for following along here at the Color and Pageantry as we preview college football 2024. Now, our 25th ranked team this year is Nebraska. In each of his previous stops, Matt Rule has made a big jump in the second year of his tenure. So it's reasonable to expect that at Nebraska, where he has a more solid base, this will happen again. Now, for the Huskers, quarterback play has been a major issue. And with 5-star legacy player Dylan Raiola on hand, we expect significant improvement. That includes the very important aspect of protecting the football. Now, Raiola is expected to have growing pains, but he is the future. Nebraska has solid running backs and an underrated receiving corps with transfers Isaiah Naylor from Texas and Jamal Banks from Wake Forest, joining Isaiah Garcia Castaneda and Malachi Coleman. The line, led by center Ben Scott, is experienced, but it's often injury-riddled, and it fails to meet potential recently, so we'll have to see how that shakes out. Nebraska was stout on defense a year ago. We expect the same. Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmaker up front are conference honors candidates. The linebacking core is ripe for a jump of quality of play. They've got Isaac Gifford in there. He's very good. The secondary is very good. That's led by corner Tommy Hill. Now, Nebraska has started slow for half a decade or so, but this year they have the potential to roll out 7-0, especially if they could beat Colorado at home in Week 2. Now, they've got a vastly improved Rutgers team in Week 6 as well. Now, a trip to Ohio State is out of the line for the Huskers, we believe. But the following game is a home one against UCLA. They are at USC, home to Wisconsin, and they close at Iowa. These are all games they can win. So we're at 9-3 for Nebraska. This is not a difficult schedule. They are improving. They may drop one and finish 8-4, but if they do, that'll get them right here on the edge of the top 25, and that's exactly where we have them. 24th is Kansas. Now, we just love what Lance Leipold is doing over there in Lawrence, and he has these Jayhawks ready to challenge for the conference championship, provided they stay healthy. It all starts with oft-injured quarterback Jalen Daniels, who simply makes plays all over the field, but can he remain healthy? Well, Kansas has one of the nation's premier running backs in Devin Neal. He ran for almost 1,300 yards last year. Now, Lawrence Arnold is back among the top 3 pass catchers that return. The line returns only two, but that includes all-conference performer Michael Ford. Now, the Jayhawks gave up way too many points last season, and for them to make the next step, this is what's got to improve. The secondary is a strong point with corners Kobe Bryant and Mello Dotson. Now, Kansas has an interesting schedule. They open with 6 straight games. A road trip to Illinois and a road trip to West Virginia are the toughest among that group. Now, you'd like to see no worse than 5-1 here. They got a homer with Houston. Then they're on the road at K-State for the next one. Then after a bye, home games against Iowa State and Colorado and road contests at BYU and Baylor finish the schedule. Well, if Kansas stays healthy at quarterback, this is a surefire bowl team, probably looking at about a 9-3 record. We have the Oklahoma Sooners 23rd. Now, we like this Oklahoma team, and we think Brent Venables has the Sooners going in the right direction. But now OU's in the SEC, and the degree of difficulty winning football games just escalated dramatically. Now, although OU likes to think they have something in the new starting quarterback Jackson Arnold, as talented as he is inexperienced, and he's going to have to learn on the fly. Gavin Sawchuk returns at running back. There's solid performers in the receiving corps, including Jalil Farooq, and Andrell Anthony and Dion Burks both transfer over. Now, up front, there's some work to do with only 2 returning starters back. Defensively, OU looks stout. Linebacker Danny Stuntsman is the top returning tackler. He's fantastic. The line is strong, and the back end's really good, with linebackers Kip Lewis and Kendall Dolby, safeties Billy Bowman, Peyton Bowen, and corner Woody Washington. But they've got to do a better job and reduce the average points per game they gave up, which just got silly at the end of 2023. Now, Venables, this is his wheelhouse, so we expect OU to get better on defense. Now, the Sooners also continue to gain a lot of strength from excellent utilization of the portal. They're going to bring in a lot of starters. That's very interesting. Now, this is the SEC, and although the schedule is manageable early, it's no friend of the Sooners. In the first schedule segment, 3 seemingly easy wins conclude with the home game against Tennessee. That's a top 15 team. And a road game at Auburn, who's really good. Both of those games could find OU as underdogs. Now, after a bye, a 5-game set starts. They got Texas and Dallas for the Red River rivalry. And that also includes games at Ole Miss. That's a top 5 team this year. And their old Big 8 rival, Missouri, who's very good. Both of these are top 15 teams. A 2-game set that has a home game against Alabama and a road game against LSU. Danger. Oh, my goodness. Now, there is 3 losses at a minimum here. And even though Oklahoma may be improved, this looks like 8-4 to us. 22nd, we got the NC State Wolfpack. Now, Coach Dave Dorn has turned NC State into a solid, consistent performer in the ACC, going 34-16 over the past 4 years, and the Wolfpack have a chance to continue their rise. Now, for 2024, the Pack have a very strong basis of attack with quarterback Grayson McCall and All-America candidate Kevin Concepcion at wide receiver. Now, the Pack have a transfer expected to step in at running back in Duke transfer Jordan Waddles. Now, he's pretty good. The offensive line is more than adequate. Defensively, there are only about 5 returning starters back, but the Pack will still bite you. Corner Aiden White is an honors candidate, and the combo of linebackers Devin Boykin and Sean Brown is stellar. Now, NC State has 8 games to start the season before a bye, which is difficult. A home game with a ranked Tennessee is tough, but that gives a heck of an opportunity for North Carolina State. Then a trip to Death Valley to face Clemson, but that's a team the Wolfpack traditionally play well, and that offers a conference-changing chance. Now, all the others are winnable. Road games at improving Georgia Tech and North Carolina, both winnable. They're the stern tests that close the season. Having the McCall-Concepcion combo early should help NC State. We think this is a top 25 team, and we got them going 9-3 in the ACC. 21st, we have Tennessee. Now, some say Tennessee is on the verge of some really big things, and others just can't see it. Only 11 starters return, but quarterback Nico Iamaleala, whose skill set has volunteer fans beaming, he's creating a ton of excitement. Now, they got skill people too. Running back Dylan Sampson returns as the top rusher. He's going to run behind an experienced line that's got Connor Mays. He's an honors candidate there at center. They got Squirrel White, who led the team in receptions last year. He's joined by highly touted transfer Brew McCoy. Now, Chris Brazel also transfers in from Tulane. Now, the defense suffered some serious losses, losing the top 5 tacklers. But defensive end James Pierce is a force off the edge, an All-America candidate, and he is going to bolster the effort the Vols have in welcoming a bunch of transfers, most notably linebacker Keenan Pili from BYU. Now, we can see why some folks think the Vols are ascending, but we can also see a notable move to the top not coming in 2024. An early game against strong NC State will be telling, and a visit to Oklahoma comes in Game 4. A visit to Arkansas, home games with Florida and Alabama form a 3-game set before a bye. Then they got a trip to Georgia late. Now, this is a manageable schedule for the Vols to grow. They're probably going to look at 8-4 this year, but hey, they could surprise. And if they win 10, look out for 2025. Number 20, we have Iowa. Now, finally, after years of having an NFL caliber defense with a high school offense, Iowa has made some changes, and it will be quite interesting to see how things work out. Now, they have a veteran team coming back, the Hawks. They got 10 starters back on offense, but they are embracing a new scheme. Now, quarterback seems Cade McNamara's position to lose, but he does appear somewhat limited from time to time, and there is a contingent of folks who think Northwestern transfer Brendan Sullivan is going to win the position. All of the top rushers return, with LaShawn Williams leading the group. The receivers are young, but with juniors Caleb Brown and Seth Anderson, those guys, they're the leadership there. As usual, Iowa has a pair of stellar tight ends led by Luke Lachey and Addison Ostrenga. Now, center Logan Jones, All-America candidate, he leads another experienced offensive line. Now, on the stop side, where Iowa brings their bucket, buddy, they come at you. Top tackler Jay Higgins returns at linebacker, as does Nick Jackson. Higgins thought to be an All-American. Sebastian Castro is an honors candidate at Rover. Now, Iowa's schedule is not that tough. They do host a veteran Iowa State team early, but they could be 4-0 before the bye week. Now, they've got to go to Ohio State. That presents a big problem. They have Washington, Wisconsin, and UCLA on the schedule. They go to Maryland. They bring Nebraska home to close it out. Now, this is not an overwhelming schedule by any means, and if Iowa can spark up some offense, look out. Now, we're kind of skeptical that they can do this all year, but they're going to be good. So we've got them at 9-3, but folks, if they can get that offense going at all, they really could be a potential playoff team. At 19, we have Texas A&M. Now, when Jimbo Fisher arrived and Texas A&M immediately started recording top national recruiting classes, the Aggie fan base started counting up national titles. But it's been nothing short of a train wreck. Fisher is out with plenty of cash, and many of the recruits have departed in one way or another. There is talent remaining, however, and former Aggie defensive coordinator Mike Elko, who had great success in his stint over at Duke, he's back as head coach. 19 starters return. So there's a chance this veteran group at A&M could exceed expectations. Now, quarterback's been an issue, with injuries playing a significant role. But Connor Wakeman is back. He led the team in 2023, so we expect big things. The top 5 ball carriers return. And the pass-catching situation is in good shape, with Ja'Day Walker returning as the top pass catcher. Noah Thomas, Moose Muhammad, they're ready to go. And Louisiana Tech transfer Cyrus Allen is coming over. Donovan Green is back at tight end, returning from injury. And the line is also very good. Now, defensively, this is not your customary wrecking crew defense, but it could be stingy. Nick Scouten, he's an imposing defensive end. High value on the transfer portal. He came in from Purdue. He's a beast. He's going to be a monster, potential All-America candidate. Defensive tackle Shamar Turner, he's also a potential All-America candidate. Now, Terrion York, he was second in tackles in 23 from his middle linebacker spot. He's going to stick there in the middle. The secondary is also pretty good. Now, the Aggies host Notre Dame to kick it off. That's a key game. There's no doubt about that. 2 weeks later, the Aggies going to go to the Swamp to play Florida. That's always a tough game, hotter than you can imagine down there. Now, border war contest with Arkansas and Missouri in the first segment of the schedule. This is a tough slate. Then LSU comes in the next segment. And then to close the schedule, the Aggies have a game at Auburn, and they host former rival Texas. Good grief. Now, things could get interesting if the Aggies upset Notre Dame, and then they roll along until that final game with Texas. They could be favored in each of the games preceding the Longhorns. Now, it would seem the youth of the Aggies would catch up to them at some point, so we don't think they get through there unscathed, but we can sure see them 9-3. Elko's a good coach. There's a lot of talent returning, so the Aggies are one to watch. 18, we got Oklahoma State. Now, we really considered moving Oklahoma State up to about 12th or so, but they always seem to stumble, so let's take a look at it. Now, they could be a very special season for Gundy and the Cowboys. Big dogs Texas and OU, they've departed the conference, and the Pokes return 19 starters, inclusive of the top 5 tacklers on defense. So they're set up. Now, did we mention All-America running back Ollie Gordon? He's also back. Now, buddy, that's a recipe for winning. Now, one of the problems might be at quarterback. Alex Bowman, he's back, but he threw 15 touchdowns against 14 interceptions last year, and that's going to have to improve dramatically for Oklahoma State to realize any big dreams. And I'm hearing backup Zane Flores is looking really good in fall camp. He might even push Alex Bowman. So a quarterback situation that's unsettled might not be the greatest thing. But boy, howdy, Gordon, he ran for 1,700 some odd yards in 23, so he'll be loose all over the place. Now, Brennan Presley, he had over 100 catches a year ago. He's a prime target, an honors candidate, and he is back. The veteran line is also pretty good. On the stop side, Colin Oliver and Nick Martin, they are top tacklers for Oklahoma State. Safety Trey Rucker and Kendall Daniels at linebacker also are just big-time stoppers. But these guys and the whole defense was not up to par last year. They gave up 28 points a game for 2 years in a row now. That is not good. Improvement is going to happen there. Now, schedule-wise, Arkansas could be trouble early, and they have games at Kansas State and West Virginia. And those are vital games. Now, the rest of the slate is manageable, but we have to see how Oklahoma State handles pressure. I mean, last year they were getting killed at home by BYU at one time. This is just not going to get it done. So Oklahoma State's going to have to handle the pressure, get settled at quarterback, and keep it rolling through the whole season. They're capable of inching into the playoff, make no mistake, but they do have a history of stumbling somewhere. So we're going to go with 10-2 for the Cowboys, but they're one to definitely keep your eye on. Kansas State is 17th. Now, over the previous years, the Wildcats at 27-13 have been a strong team that's seemingly not given the credit that they deserve. Now, 2024 is going to be an interesting season for the Cats. Former quarterback Will Howard, he's bolted over to Ohio State. But the Wildcats are really excited about the future prospect with their new quarterback, Avery Johnson. Have you seen this guy? Gosh, he's going to make some things happen. Very exciting player. Now, his skill set is something that Coach Kleiman wants to utilize in opening up the Kansas State offense. This is going to be exciting to watch. Running back DJ Giddens, he ran for 1,200 some odd yards in 2023. He's back. He's going to challenge for all conference honors. Now, the Cats need some replacements in the receiving corps, and they found one in Iowa transfer Keegan Johnson. Now, J.C. Brown is set to emerge after 27 catches last season, so they got a nice pair there. The line, this is most often an area of strength for Kansas State, but it's a work in progress. But we think Eason Kitty has a bright future there. Now, 4 of the top 5 tacklers returned defensively, led by weak side linebacker Austin Moore. Defensive end Brandon Lott and safety Jordan Riley give the Cats strength at each defensive level. Now, the Wildcats have a very favorable schedule. They got an early home game with Arizona, but remember, Arizona's got the new coach, so things could be in a little bit of turmoil there. And they have a difficult contest coming up in the first 5 games. That's at home against conference contender Oklahoma State. The winner of that is going to be in the driver's seat. Now, the rest of the way, road games at West Virginia, who's good this year, and a homer against Sunflower State rival Kansas, closing at Iowa State. These are the most serious tests for Kansas State. They're all winnable for the Cats, especially if Avery Johnson's making things happen like we think he will. So look, folks, Kansas State, like Oklahoma State, this team can do some damage. We got them at 10-2, but you want to keep your eye on them, and you want to get a look at that young quarterback, Avery Johnson. That kid is special. 16, we got Virginia Tech. Yep, the Hokies. Can you believe it? We haven't seen them in a while, right? Now, for a while there, especially after they lost to Old Dominion, it looked like their coach might be in over his head over there. Boy, they quickly got things handled up now, and they're looking good. And they have a very talented and experienced young team. They may be ready, the Hokies, to make some serious noise. Now, it centers around their quarterback, Kyron Jones. This guy was nobody's ever heard of him. He was masterful for Virginia Tech in 2023. He threw only 17 touchdowns, but fired only 3 interceptions. He's ready for a big year. Leading rusher Bashuk Tootin is back at running back, and top pass catcher Daquan Felton is back as well. Now, the line lacks big-time players as far as the names that you're going to recognize, but the group has a ton of collective starts, and that's usually a really good sign. Now, their lunch bucket Virginia Tech defense has returning talent at each level. Weak side linebacker Kelly Lawson and Antoine Powell-Ryland. That guy's an All-America candidate. And corner Dorian Strong. This guy's a great player, too. They give the Hokies plenty to work with. Now, Virginia Tech travels to Miami for a bout with the Hurricanes, but if they win that, it's reasonable to have them 7-0 and ranked in the top 15 just as we get past the midway point of the season. They have Georgia Tech and Clemson. Those are home games. And the Hokies miss NC State and Florida State. Boy, that's fortunate. Now, Virginia Tech, they are ready to roll. They've got a schedule that is fantastic. And they are our surprise breakout team for 2024. We got the Hokies 10-2, but folks, they could be undefeated heading into the ACC championship game. And if they are, you heard about it here first. LSU is 15th. Although there's been some skepticism, there's been quite a bit of fanfare since the arrival of Brian Kelly from Notre Dame. But even with Heisman Trophy winner, an arsenal of NFL draft picks, the Tigers are only 20-7 under Kelly. It's time for the Tigers to roar. Now 12 starters are back. And while that's not a veteran team, the Tigers are set at quarterback. And replacing the Heisman winner, who's off to the NFL, is Garrett Nussmeier. Now, he's got experience. He could be among the best in the conference. Now, including the transfers, 4 starters are back on the line, led by monster talents Emory Jones and Will Campbell, who are both on their way to stardom. Now, a top returnee's not available at running back, but Caleb Jackson and Josh Williams, they're going to fare fine. LSU, always known for their talented receiving corps, 2024 is no different. Kyron Lacey's the top guy, but watch Aaron Anderson. He transfers in from Alabama. And Mason Taylor, he could be your All-America tight end. The guy's fantastic. Now, there's no reason for alarm, but we do think the Tigers regress a bit on the offensive potency. Defensively, the Tigers are great. Obviously, they always are. It starts with phenom weak side linebacker Harold Perkins. Now, in 2022, Perkins was ridiculous, took the nation by storm. But he played a different position in 2023 and did not have the same effectiveness. Now, we're going to see how Perkins is utilized this year and how his impact will man up the game. He's going to be a factor. There's no question. Now, the top 2 tacklers, linebackers Greg Penn and Major Burns, they're both back. But the line is inexperienced and the secondary is not up to the usual LSU standards. But we think LSU is going to be fine. This team has a ton of talent, but it does look a little bit inferior to the 2 Kelly teams that we've recently seen with the Tigers. The schedule's favorable. They get USC to open in Las Vegas. That's an interesting and important game, but they faced FSU and lost each of the past 2 years, and USC is not FSU. So a 5-0 start is probable for LSU. But then after a bye week, they got powerful Ole Miss coming in before they have border war games at Arkansas and Texas A&M. Now another bye precedes a visit from Alabama. And then they take a trip to Florida, where they usually play well. But the Gators might have their backs against the wall there in the swamp. We have to see how that plays out. Now Vanderbilt then comes in, and then Oklahoma visits. Now the schedule could be much worse. There's no Texas and no Georgia. Holy cow, that's great. But this team does not appear to be the team that it was the last couple years. So we think there's going to be some struggles. We got LSU 9-3. At 14, we have Clemson. Now, it has been interesting to watch Clemson fall a bit from having their annual spot in the playoff game. Now, that game last year at home against Florida State, that seemed to be like the final stand for the Tigers on the elite stage. They lost it. Close, but they lost it. Now, for those expecting Clemson to just bounce back, the Gator Bowl game, where the Tigers barely beat Kentucky, seems disappointing. Now, Cade Klubnik is back. He's no Trevor Lawrence in our view, but he's a strong 5-star recruit. Quarterback, he's got a room to continue to help elevate his game. Now, Will Shipley's gone. He's a talented running back, but they got Phil Maffa back. Antonio Williams and Bryant Wasco lead the receiving corps, and that's, of course, anchored by that great tight end, Jake Bringingstool. Now, the line offensively is very strong. On the defensive side, the linebacking core is stout. That's led by All-America player Barrett Carter. R.J. Mickens is in the secondary. He's very good. But the line up front is not that usual nasty bunch of NFL players Clemson usually has. Now, the Tigers open in Atlanta against Georgia. Now, that's an opportunity to shock the world, but Georgia's no team to be trying to fix things and get things going against. In Week 3, they face NC State. They've lost 2 of the last 3 to the Pack, so that could be trouble. And then a trip to Florida State follows, so Clemson could be 2-3 at some point in here. Now, aside for perhaps a road game at Virginia Tech, the Tigers would seemingly be favored the rest of the way. So they're going to be a very interesting team to watch, no doubt about it this season. But we think Clemson's got at least 2, maybe 3, maybe even 4 losses. We've got them 14th, probably 9-3. Next, we have the Miami Hurricanes. For seemingly a pair of decades plus, Miami has failed to realize expectations, and those expectations are high. Now, the Hurricanes brought in favorite son Mario Cristobal from Oregon to help get the U back to the glory days. Now, on paper, this team this year looks quite capable of an attempt in that regard. The Canes move on from Tyler Van Dyke at quarterback and have brought in Cam Ward from Washington State, the uber-talented signal caller who was highly sought after in the portal. Ward has all the tools, but an area of improvement for him could be ball protection. Fantastic Oregon State running back Damian Martinez, an All-America player, he's also transferred in, with Mark Fletcher and A.J. Allen complementing the room. Xavier Restrepo, the leading receiver from 2023, he's back, and that room is deep. The offensive line is decent as well. Now, leading tackler Francisco Miago returns at linebacker, and the line, led by All-America candidate Reuben Bain, is outstanding. The staff is excited by West Virginia transfer Darrell Porter at corner, and man, they got some pieces. Now, the opener is huge. They're at the Swamp against the Gators, who are a talented bunch with much to prove. And it's Florida's schedule that catches them. So right early, it could be a very interesting game in the Swamp. It'll be about 105 in there. Now, from there, the next big one seems to be hosting Virginia Tech, who's really improving, and they return almost their entire team. So that's going to be a tough game. Miami travels to Louisville, who's pretty good, and then they host Florida State at a big interstate squabble. Now, the Seminoles have a streak going against the Canes, and this is probably the must game on the schedule if Miami's looking for playoff opportunities. But even losing to that one, the schedule's not overwhelmingly challenging for a team like Miami that seems to stumble easily. Now, anything worse than 9-3 would be a disappointment here, but the Canes could be looking for more, and Ward could be the guy to take them there. 13, we have Michigan. Now, it was a sensational season for the Wolverines in 2023 as they claimed their first national championship in many moons in somewhat dominating fashion. Now, it was not without controversy, and things have changed big time as we head into 2024. Jim Harbaugh's gone to the NFL, and the veteran championship team has been depleted. For starters, there are only 2 offensive starters returning, and none seem to be surefire top conference honor candidates. Only 1 starter on the always powerful offensive line returns, and the top wideouts are gone. Tight end Colston Loveland had 45 catches. He's an All-America candidate at tight end. But it would seem the offense is going to center around running back Donovan Edwards, who's an NFL player in waiting. Now, there is some quality talent on each level of the defense. Nose tackle Mason Graham is an All-America player, and Josiah Stewart has promise on the edge. Ernest Hausman is a tackling machine at linebacker, and All-America corner Will Johnson and safety Markari Page give the Wolverines a nucleus to build from in the secondary. Now, for a depleted team, an opener with Fresno State ahead of a matchup for Texas could be troublesome, and powerful veteran Texas will bring a big problem for the Wolverines. Now, among the top teams to visit Ann Arbor are USC and Oregon. Oregon is, of course, a top 3 team. And the Wolverines have road trips to Washington and the Ohio State Buckeyes. Now, Michigan is inexperienced and a far cry from the team we watched last year, but the schedule is not overwhelming and gives the Wolverines a shot at the playoff once again. But we got them about 9-3. Michigan, defending national champions, 9-3, 13th. Missouri comes in at 11th. Now, one thing that cannot be denied is that Eli Drinkwitz has risen the level of play at Missouri. And with 9 starters back from a team that went 11-2 and beat Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl, there's plenty of optimism in Columbia. Now, Brady Cook is back at quarterback after a fine season in 2023. He had 21 touchdowns against only 5 interceptions and over 3,300 yards. Now, that's a season, folks. Now, top target Luther Burden, an All-America player, former 5-star recruit. He's back at receiver after 86 catches and 1,200 some odd yards in 2023. What a lethal combination Mizzou has. Now, the next 4 targets, including Theo Weiss, who transferred in from Oklahoma, they give the Tigers plenty of potency out there on the edge. Now, Appalachian State transfer Nate Knoll is set at running back. Armand Mimbo, who is Shine, leads a talented and veteran offensive line. Now, although honors candidates are sparse heading into the year, Missouri settled down defensively last year after a rough start. Free safety Joseph Charleston is the top returning tackler, and linebacker Tristan Newsome, he looks like a keeper there. Star Dylan Carroll is a sideline-to-sideline force over there for Mizzou. Now, Missouri's going to be 4-0 before they travel to Texas A&M after a bye week. A&M's a bit of a problem, veteran team, and the winner of that looks like it's in pretty good spot. They got Auburn at home, then they visit Alabama, both of which are going to take flawless efforts to win. Now, a home game with former Big 8 rival Oklahoma is the toughest among the 4 games to close the season. So it's hard to find more than 2 losses on the schedule. And this team could easily win 11. We'll go 10-2, but watch Mizzou. 10 is Penn State. Now, few teams have been as close as Penn State in recent seasons. However, the Lions have not been able to get over the hump of Ohio State and Michigan. Now, some are thinking this is the year, and we can kind of see why. Now, Drew Aller is back at quarterback, but the 5-star recruit has yet to take the big leap necessary to slay the conference dragons. Now, an honors candidate is found in the backfield in Nicholas Singleton, although the line, led by Sal Wormley, is young. Tyler Warren, he had 34 catches last year. He's the leading returnee at wideout, but the Lions welcome outstanding Ohio State transfer Julian Fleming, who's got star potential. Now, if Penn State gets it done, the defense is going to do it. 4 of the top tacklers from 2023 are back, including defensive end Abdul Carter, who's an All-America candidate, and corner Jalen Kimber, who transfers in from Georgia to bolster that secondary where Jalen Reed is roaming. Now, Allar had better be ready to go because Penn State opens in Morgantown, where West Virginia, who's a pretty good football team, is lying in wait. Now, Penn State faces UCLA at home and USC on the road to close out the first segment of the schedule. After they have a bye week, they have a road game at Wisconsin. That's followed by Ohio State and Washington homers. Now, Ohio State's a tough one, the one they need to win. Now, it gets easier from there, but there's no Michigan. So Penn State looks like they could lose a few, but they could perhaps claim a playoff berth, and then with that defense, who knows? We got them about 10-2, the Lions. 9th, we have Alabama. Now, Nick Saban, arguably the greatest college football coach of all time, has hung up his hat. Saban was brilliant and still will be an analyst of the game, but I'm not sure we fully appreciate how good he is right now. That being said, while there's still a multitude of talent, we think we'll notice a drop tick in the Crimson Tide's performance this year. And that's no knock on new coach Caleb DeBoer, who comes over from Washington, and someone we view as an outstanding coach. But he's no Nick Saban. Nobody else coaching at the moment seems to be that either. But Alabama will still be formidable and a playoff team, just not coming in as the favorite as usual. Now, Jalen Milroe at quarterback is a Heisman candidate. He leads this team. It is somewhat worrisome that returning proven talent at the skill positions is thin. But this is Alabama, and they've recruited at the top level of the game. Now, Kobe Prentice had 18 catches a year ago. He leads the wide receiver group. And Justice Hayes will be fine at running back. That line is really good as usual. Now, defense is Alabama's calling card. Safety Malachi Moore and linebacker Deontay Lawson are All-America candidates for the Tide. Now, the good news is the schedule allows time to grow. Alabama travels to Wisconsin in balmy September to face a team also seemingly in some sort of transition. The third Saturday in October is going to be informative for both participants as Alabama faces Tennessee. A homer with Missouri, who's a very good football team, comes before Bama travels to LSU after a bye week. A trip to Oklahoma, the new SEC participant. And then a home date for the Iron Bowl close the year. If you embrace realism, there are a couple of losses here. Now the question would seem to be how Alabama looks late. Are they ascending, or have plans not gone quite as they thought they might? We still got Alabama 10-2, and they're going to be a playoff team. We just don't think this is the Alabama that we know and love so much. Roll Tide. Utah comes up next. Now, we've been fooled by Utah before, even thinking they were a playoff team a few years back. They look great on paper, and they're tough as nails, but something always seems to derail the Utes. But with Utah now over in the Big 12, with many of the big boys out of the way, the path seems easier for the Utes. Utah has 9 starters back on defense, and that's a great nucleus for a team to have a great year. Defensive tackle Junior Tafuna is an All-American candidate to be sure. Kareem Reed, he's among the top returning tacklers. The big news offensively is Cam Rising is back at quarterback for about his 8th year. This guy is often injured, but when he is healthy, he's been a total stud, and he could be an honors candidate, surefire, if he stays healthy all year. Jaken Glover is back in the backfield, and the top 2 receivers from 23 return. On top of the fact that Dorian Singer, a great receiver from Arizona, has transferred in. That guy's fantastic. Then you throw in Brett Kuthi, the tight end. He's an All-America candidate. Now, the line is definitely good at Utah. That's always the case. So the offense looks fantastic, and the defense looks good. Now, the first segment of the schedule closes with an important contest at Oklahoma State, who's a Big 12 title contender. That's followed by a tilt with Arizona, who was strong last year, but of course they lost their coach. Now, if healthy, Utah is favored the rest of the way, and I got my eye on that finale against UCF in Orlando because UCF is a lot better than people think. But if Utah can beat Oklahoma State and get by UCF, they could be undefeated. We recall history and go with Utah stumbling somewhere, 11-1, but they'll probably be in the playoff. Florida State is next. Now, Florida State absolutely should have been in the playoff last year and would have won it in our view with a healthy Jordan Travis at quarterback, but politics sadly prevailed. I, for one, will never view the majority of ESPN talent propagandists the same way ever again. Now, one would think the potential for a boulder-sized chip to be on Chief Osceola's shoulder here, but much of that team is gone, and this year is new. Now, former Clemson and Oregon State quarterback DJ Uiagalelei has transferred in, and the hopes are he will continue to elevate his game after dazzling as a freshman for the Clemson Tigers. Now, he will have tools galore to work with and a veteran offensive line led by Maurice Smith and Darius Washington. Lawrence Toafili is back at running back, and Alabama transfer Roydell Williams joins a talented room. Another Alabama transfer, wide receiver Malik Benson, could be wide receiver 1 in a room full of talent, and that includes tight end Kyle Morlock. Now, defensively, the secondary is a strength for the Seminoles, led by Shaheem Brown. There is talent at linebacker, and the line has a chance to be really good with defensive end Patrick Payton and tackles Joshua Farmer and Darrell Jackson. Now, Marvin Jones Jr. has transferred in from Georgia, and he could wreak havoc on the edge. That's a 5-star recruit there. His dad was a great player for the Seminoles. Now, FSU faces a much improved Georgia Tech team in Ireland, and I believe this one will be much closer than the experts think. Now, FSU has a road trip to SMU, new to the ACC, and SMU is a very good football team, so that could be troublesome for the Seminoles. But they should be able to withstand all that before hosting Clemson, who's a good football team. We know Clemson. Now, later, they're going to have a road tilt at Miami, and then another road game at Notre Dame. That brackets a homer with North Carolina. Of course, FSU is going to close at Florida this year. Now, Florida State's a solid top 10 team and might be much better if Norvell continues to hold a masterclass on merging existent talent with transfer portal gems. We think he'll do it, but we got 10-2 for Florida State. That's a tough schedule. A lot has to come together, but they're going to the playoff, we believe. 6th is Notre Dame. Now, it feels like an important season for the Fighting Irish and head coach Marcus Washington. This team is veteran, and although they have their usual difficult schedule, it's manageable for the Fighting Irish. Now, Duke quarterback Riley Leonard, he's been brilliant when he's been healthy. He's transferred in. He's going to direct the Irish. Now, coming off an injury, we expect, but we don't know how healthy Leonard is and how healthy he will be when the Irish open at Texas A&M. It's a tough football game there. Now, if he's healthy, will he stay that way? That's another big question. Now, there are talented backs and receivers, along with a tremendous tight end in Mitchell Evans for Notre Dame to work with. Clemson wideout Bo Collins, he's coming over there. He's going to figure prominently, we believe. Now, as usual, that offensive line we talked about, very, very good at Notre Dame. Over on the defensive side, safety Xavier Watts is an All-America player, and Michael Williams at corner could be. We know Howard Cross, an All-America defensive lineman. He's going to anchor that defense. There are 9 starters back, and they add a transfer nickelback in Jordan Clark. If Notre Dame gets by A&M, the only potential stumbling block is upstart Louisville at home and emerging Georgia Tech in Atlanta before Florida State comes to South Bend in November. Notre Dame closes against USC out in Los Angeles. Now, this feels like an excellent opportunity for Notre Dame, but they need everything to come together and their quarterback to stay healthy to do it. But we got them 11-1, kind of at the worst. They're going to be in the playoff, the Fighting Irish. 5th is Ole Miss. Now, Paul Feinbaum over at the SEC Net, he loves to bash Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, but he may have a point when it suggests that it's time for the Rebels to make an SEC statement, and this may be the year. If an Achilles heel exists for Ole Miss, it will once again be on the stop side. Safety Trey Washington returns as the team's leading tackler, but 2 transfers look very promising. Walter Nolan from Texas A&M at defensive tackle, and Princely Unimillion from the University of Florida at linebacker. Both of those guys are great players and potential All-America candidates. Ole Miss adds other transfers and has recruited very well, so there is optimism on that side of the ball. Now, offensively, look out. Jackson Dart is back at quarterback, and he has wide-ranging tools at his disposal. Ulysses Bentley is an underrated running back, and the receiving corps is among the nation's best with All-America candidate Trey Harris. And South Carolina transfer Antoine Wells. Have you seen that guy? He's an emerging star. Now, Caden Preekstorm is a huge threat at tight end, and the offensive line is very experienced. Now, look out now. Ole Miss could be 6-0 before they travel to LSU in a game the Rebels have got to win if they want to reach the elite. Oklahoma and Georgia, now Georgia's a problem, are at home late in the year. So the opportunity to catapult to the elite is there for the taking for Lane Kiffin and the Rebels. Look out! We got them 11-1. 5th in the country. I believe it'll be the highest they've finished in 3 or 4 decades. 4th, we got the Texas Longhorns. Now, we wonder if in the long term, the Texas Longhorns will find a better life on the gridiron in the SEC. But here we are. Unfortunately for the Longhorns, they are a veteran team in 2024. They have all the pieces necessary to compete at the highest level in this conference, even the SEC. Offensively, the quarterback position is perhaps the best room in the country. Now, even though he battled injuries, Quinn Evers is the returning starter who threw 22 touchdowns and 6 interceptions for about 3,500 yards last year. And then in the waiting is Arch Manning, so the Horns are locked in here. Now, C.J. Baxter is an outstanding young running back with all the tools. Now, turnover does exist at receiver, but transferring in are quality targets from Alabama and Oregon State. 4 of the 5 starters are back on the offensive line, so Texas is going to score points. Now, defensively, 4 of the top 5 tacklers return on a defense with no high-level preseason stars other than perhaps middle linebacker Anthony Hill, but a house full of young, fiery people. Now, the schedule is forgiving, with Georgia at home and a depleted Michigan on the road. OU is in Dallas for the Red River rivalry, as usual, and the Horns do close at rival Texas A&M. Now, this seems like a pretty doggone good opportunity for Texas, one that you don't want to waste. So we got the Horns at 11-1. They're going to be in the playoff, and they got the team to make some noise. 3rd is Oregon. Now, will the Ducks be in for a rude awakening as they enter the Big Ten Conference? Now, history would lead us to think so, but Oregon seems very well equipped for this change in scenery. This is a very veteran football team, great skill talent, and one thing that's a key element is that both of the lines of scrimmage for the Ducks are great. Now, quarterback Dylan Gabriel, remember him from Oklahoma and formerly UCF, he's among the nation's best, and he's got talent to work with everywhere, most notably in the wide receiving room that has Tez Johnson and Texas A&M transfer Evan Stewart. and he's got a veteran running back in Jordan James. Now, the offensive line is outstanding. Ajanai Cornelius is up there. He's an All-America candidate. 9 starters are back on the defense, where linebacker Jeff Libasa headhunts. Now, the schedule is perfect. Oregon goes to Ohio State, but they can avenge that game, even with a loss, if they reach the conference title game, which we think they will. Oregon State, UCLA, Michigan, and Wisconsin are all on the road. But Oregon's going to be favored in every one of those games. Now, the Ducks find themselves swimming in a calm portion of the lake, and that could lead them to a national championship. Look out. Number 2, we have Ohio State. Now, the Buckeyes are poised to regain their grip on the Big Ten Conference with this very talented team. The only potential concerning area here is at quarterback, where the ready-to-go-to stellar 5-star in waiting is not on the roster. So the Buckeyes brought in Kansas State transfer Will Howard, who showed flashes of brilliance for the Cats. Now, Howard has the skill set to step up his game, but he's not thought of as a game breaker. Now, helping Howard will be Donovan Jackson, who leads a veteran offensive line returning 4 starters. Now, elsewhere, Ohio State showcases strength. Running backs an area of wealth with veteran Travion Henderson and the addition of Ole Miss transfer Quinshon Judkins, who turned heads for the Rebels a year ago. Now, Ohio State is a training ground for wide receivers. They've got Emeka Egbuka, who's an All-America candidate at the position to be sure. Enter number 1 overall recruit Jeremiah Smith. He's going to immediately shine. And what do you got? You got a potentially potent offense in Columbus. Now, 5 of the top 7 tacklers are back. And the defensive line's where it's at, folks. You know, JT Tumialu, that guy's making tackles all over the place. How about defensive tackle Tyleek Williams? These guys are All-America candidates. And then there's Jack Sawyer. This guy he's really good. Now, in the secondary, Denzel Burke is at corner. Very good player. Talented. First-team All-America transfer Caleb Downs is coming in to play safety. Good grief. They're going to be tough on the backside and the front, all over the place on defense and on offense. Now, a road game in the mid-season against Oregon is going to be a preview of things to come in the new Big Ten structure this year. But beating Michigan at home to close the regular season, that's the new hurdle they got to cross. And if they get by that, then they can get with Oregon in that championship game. Either way, both of those teams, Oregon and Ohio State, if it comes out the way we see it, both of them are going to the playoff, and both of them can win it. We got Ohio State second, 11-1, and heading to the playoff. Our preseason number 1 this year is the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, the Dogs, winners of 2 of the last 3 national championships, are loaded again this fall. There are 5-star recruits everywhere, and the backup depth is on par with many bowl teams. All-America, there are tons of them. Carson Beck leads at quarterback, but the offensive line led by Tate Rutledge is perhaps the nation's best. A potential drawback would be the lack of proven talent at the skill positions offensively, but the folks getting ready to play are high-quality players ready to cash in on their opportunity. Now, safety Malachi Starks leads the defensive unit, but the defensive line's a bit unexperienced. We got Nazzle Stackhouse up there at nose tackle, but the rest of it, they got some work to do there. But this is Georgia. Now, inside linebacker Smile Mondon is the top returning tackler. He's back. He's going to keep up the work. Now, the schedule may be the Dogs' toughest obstacle. They face Clemson out of the gate in a border war, and Clemson's got things to prove. Now, they play on the road against Alabama and SEC newbie Texas, who's a top 5 team by all accounts. Now, Georgia is Georgia. This is a tough, deep football team with a great quarterback and some fantastic players. So we expect Georgia to be right in the thick of it and to play for it all once again in 2024. We think they win them all heading into the playoff. The Georgia Bulldogs. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that does it for our preview. We had our All-America team. We looked at some teams that did not get in the top 25, some close ones, and then we previewed each of our top 25 teams. We'd like to thank you for joining us on this. This was a kind of a lengthy video, but took a lot to get everybody in. Just going to be an exciting season. It all kicks off Saturday, August 24th at noon with Florida State and Georgia Tech over in Dublin, Ireland. And then, buddy, we're going to kick them all off. Get all your TVs, get your cold beer, Get ready to go. It's college football 2024. We're very excited, looking forward to it. Hope you'll enjoy the season. And again, do follow us over at the Color and Pageantry on Facebook. We'll have some nice updates for you over there. Hey, appreciate you watching. You guys have a great college football season. Ninth, we have Alabama. Now, Nick Saban, arguably the greatest college football coach of all time, has hung up his hat. Saban was brilliant and still will be an analyst of the game, but I'm not sure we fully appreciate how good he is right now. That being said, while there's still a multitude of talent, we think we'll notice a drop tick in the Crimson Tide's performance this year. And that's no knock on new coach Caleb DeBoer, who comes over from Washington, and someone we view as an outstanding coach. But he's no Nick Saban. Nobody else coaching at the moment seems to be that either. But Alabama will still be formidable and a playoff team, just not coming in as the favorite as usual. Now, Jalen Milroe at quarterback is a Heisman candidate. He leads this team. It is somewhat worrisome that returning proven talent at the skill positions is thin. But this is Alabama, and they've recruited at the top level of the game. Now, Kobe Prentice had 18 catches a year ago. He leads the wide receiver group. And Justice Hayes will be fine at running back. That line is really good as usual. Now, defense is Alabama's calling card. Safety Malachi Moore and linebacker Deontay Lawson are All-America candidates for the Tide. Now, the good news is the schedule allows time to grow. Alabama travels to Wisconsin in balmy September to face a team also seemingly in some sort of transition. The third Saturday in October is going to be informative for both participants as Alabama faces Tennessee. A homer with Missouri, who's a very good football team, comes before Bama travels to LSU after a bye week. A trip to Oklahoma, the new SEC participant. And then a home date for the Iron Bowl close the year. If you embrace realism, there are a couple of losses here. Now, the question would seem to be how Alabama looks late. Are they ascending, or have plans not gone quite as they thought they might? We still got Alabama 10-2, and they're going to be a playoff team. We just don't think this is the Alabama that we know and love so much. Roll Tide.